There are a number of U.S. politicians or U.S. authorities in law enforcement that are on the cartel payroll.
Welcome back. Today is Sunday, August 17th, and Trump has deployed 4,000 troops into Latin America with the goal of eradicating the cartels. Many Democrats are not happy about this because this gives the opportunity for Trump to get yet another win. One way you know you're on the wrong side of history is if your actions can be interpreted as being on the side of the cartels. But actions motivated by hitting Trump can only last for so much longer. After all, we only have him for about 3.5 more years. So there's no stretch at all believing that the main reason they don't like this is because of more nefarious reasons, which Katarina Schultz confirmed only a month ago on the Sean Ryan show.
How much money in general are they seeding into U.S. politics?
A lot of the cartel money is in the U.S., point blank. Whether that is through the shell companies or certain operations that they're conducting in the U.S. In terms of politics, there are a number of U.S. politicians or U.S. authorities in law enforcement that are on the cartel payroll. For the most part, this happens in border towns or in states that are major profit regions for the cartel. So that's California, Texas, Arizona.
So are these local governments?
It goes up high on the food chain to the federal level.
To the federal level?
Yeah, I've seen it firsthand. On the federal level, cartels have basically infiltrated any member of politics that they believe they can get to, that is willing to work with them, and that can push policy that directly benefits them.
And we're going to go back in time a bit to the 60s and 70s, because it's important to understand kind of the timeline and the historical context of these problems with the cartel and Mexico. In the 1960s and 70s, the trafficking of heroin and marijuana into the US was just beginning to start. The Mexican trafficking operations during this time were very small. At this time, things weren't that organized. In fact, it was in the 1980s when Colombia and Pablo Escobar, I'm sure you've all heard of him, and the Cali cartel really started to kick things off. Now, given that the cocaine was produced in Colombia, it was much easier to just leapfrog over Mexico at the time by going through the Caribbean islands. This route included the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, Haiti, the Dominican Republic. They were mostly loaded in speedboats and cargo ships, but many of them were taken by twin and single-engine aircraft. They would then fly those aircraft to the Florida coast and deliver their goods that way. Now, all of this traffic led to the U.S. declaring a war on drugs. The major Colombian cartels were broken up. Pablo Escobar was killed in 1993, and from there, the trafficking shifted over to Mexico. During the early 2000s, the Mexican cartel expanded massively. And like any good business or company, when you are growing, you have to start providing other products. This included meth, fentanyl, human trafficking, extortion, and even kidnapping. And due to this, the Mexican government launched a war against these cartels in 2006. Now, the result wasn't as they hoped. Even with the US backing with billions of dollars in equipment and aid, what was known as the Merida Initiative, things simply got worse. The reason being, the cartels were decentralized. And when you have multiple cartels competing, you have even more violence because now the violence is against each other. The 6-year period between 2006 and 2012 resulted in 60,000 deaths related to the cartel. So at the end of the day, with Mexico leading, the war with the cartels ended up being a stalemate. And that leads us to where we are today, where the cartels have diversified into fentanyl, which fuels the current US opioid epidemic. Back in February, Trump classified these cartels as terrorist organizations.
As secretary, will you initiate the process to designate these groups, these cartels, as foreign terrorist organizations? And if so, can you describe for the American people the national security tools that unlocks, that designation unlocks, to degrade the cartels?
Well, first of all, the designation of a designated foreign terrorist organization brings with it a host of things. It makes it illegal to cooperate or work with them in any way or to be supportive of their endeavors. It cuts off access to all sorts of banking opportunities and the like around the world where it's important to move money around. Now, that said, it's probably an imperfect tool when it comes to these groups that you're discussing, because these are sophisticated criminal enterprises. They are terrorizing the United States, but they are sophisticated criminal enterprises, and they operate in the trafficking of people, drugs, and migrants to horrifying effect.
What the Democrats are saying they're really against is that Trump may be taking away Mexico's sovereignty. that he will be overstepping their authority, and that they should decide how to deal with their problems. Interestingly enough, those same politicians likely said nothing when Boris Johnson stepped in between Ukraine and Russia and prevented them from solving their problems. Nevertheless, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum had this to say earlier this week.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum lashed out at Trump's move, saying the United States is going to come to Mexico with the military. We cooperate, we collaborate, but there is not going to be an invasion. That's ruled out, absolutely ruled out. President Sheinbaum spoke at a news conference Monday.
I was informed there would be an order, but it has nothing to do with the country of Mexico. It has to do with their country, not our country.
Parpadea tres veces if you are under distress, Mrs. President. Perhaps it's eluded these Democrat politicians that if the cartels have control of the American government, they sure as hell have control of the Mexican government. Now, luckily, my biggest viewer demographic is between the ages of 40 and 65, and therefore I'm allowed to make this MASH reference. Now, I don't know if the Democrats have considered this, but perhaps Claudia is like a little sleeping baby, and if she wakes up and starts screaming and yelling for help with these cartels, that they may just choke her out.
You son of a bitch, why did you make me remember that?
Sadly, they also have basically operational control over huge swaths of the border regions between Mexico and the United States. That's just an unfortunate fact, and it's one we're going to have to confront with our partners in Mexico, is that these sophisticated transnational terroristic organizations have operational and functional control over huge swaths of areas that border the United States of America.
Now, Trump sending these troops into Latin America is all part of the grander plan of reducing these fentanyl deaths, which is why just last month, Trump also signed the Halt Fentanyl Act to help with this problem.
Today we strike a righteous blow to the drug dealers, narcotic traffickers, and criminal cartels that we've all been hearing so much about for so many years, and very little has been done. And we take a historic step toward justice for every family touched by the fentanyl scourge as we sign the Halt Fentanyl Act into law. Good job. Good job. With this bill, we are officially and permanently classifying all fentanyl-related substances as Schedule I narcotic. Anyone caught trafficking these illicit poisons will be punished with a mandatory 10-year minimum sentence in prison. We'll be getting the drug dealers, pushers, and peddlers off our street, and we will not rest until we have ended the drug overdose epidemic. And it's been getting a little bit better, but it's horrible. It's horrible. We're going to end it once and for all.
Now, if I'm a Mexican citizen, the question that I would be asking myself at this very moment is, why are my leaders not giving the U.S. full reign to do what they need to do to stop this problem once and for all? That's maybe something to consider next time you hold elections.
I think there's a lot we can and will continue to do in close partnership with our allies in Mexico. I think there's more they can do as well to confront this challenge. And my preference would be, from the Department of State's perspective, my preference would be that we can work with the Mexicans on this issue cooperatively, because it is impacting their nation as much as ours. These sophisticated groups, these criminal organizations, don't simply threaten America, they threaten the Mexican political process. In the last election, you had multiple presidential candidates and other candidates to other offices assassinated. You've had journalists targeted and assassinated for speaking out against these groups. So these groups don't simply terrorize the United States, they're terrorizing and in some ways undermining the Mexican government and Mexican sovereignty and the health and well-being of the Mexican people.
I'm Jake Day. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this news with a little bit of historical context, and I will see you tomorrow.